October 1949. Scientists at Battelle send a progress report to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. An hour's drive away, the nonprofit specializes in metallurgy and has a long history of contractual government work, including classified special access programs. Battelle is investigating alloys, including a mixture of titanium and nickel known as nitinol. Equal parts each metal, nitinol is unique because it has what's known as shape memory. It can be deformed by a force and stay in shape when the force is removed, but recover its original shape after it's heated. Declassified documents show Battelle was working on the alloy 10 years before it was publicly discovered. They include several references to a sample that is analyzed and reported on to Wright-Patterson. Where might this sample have come from? And is evidence of collection of unidentified flying objects already public? We cover obscure declassified files. Subscribe to join us. Buried in the report is a section by E.J. Center. 45 years later, two Battelle alumni, both with MUFON at the time, detailed a second-hand encounter with an Elroy John Center, who claimed to have worked at the company and studied parts from a flying saucer. More notably, though, the Battelle progress reports disclosing Center's involvement in titanium research for Wright-Patterson had not yet been made public at time of the MUFON article. This connection was only verified when the reports were declassified in 2009. So what, though? How do we know Wright-Patterson was interested in UFO materials? And do we have more concrete evidence of this? Meaningful documents are already public, just not properly connected. This draft memo shows the 1127th USAF Field Activities Group had collection responsibilities related to UFOs. Project Moondust would locate and recover foreign space vehicles, and Blue Fly would deliver them. Moondust did deal with terrestrial craft noted here, where they tracked over 60 U.S. and Soviet objects in 1967. A large, redacted portion of the memo remains. Did officials act on these procedures, though? We know from other files Moondust did collect UFO reports from around the world, like here, when they monitored 3 unidentified cigar-shaped objects flying in formation above Pakistan. Or here, when Moondust and the 1127th were on communication between the American Embassy in Nepal and the Defense Intelligence Agency about objects found in a crater. Even close allies received inquiries. In '76, Wright-Patterson and the CIA, subject line Moondust, requested photos of space-related metal from Canadian authorities. The Air Force expressed interest in participating in the examination of the objects. It's not disclosed if USAF flew to Ontario or if the metal was sent to Ohio. But, unlike the U.S., who has denied crashes of unidentified flying objects, Canadian records have several. And pages of files show both countries have had a deep relationship in the UFO field for decades. Thanks to the work of Jason Carignan, National Chief Investigator for MUFON Canada, we have several rarely seen accounts of strange, unidentified objects crashing in the Canadian wilderness. July 18, 1960. Clan Lake, a remote region in the Northwest Territories. A redacted individual, deemed very reliable by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, reports seeing an object with arms or spokes crash into the lake. It was 4 to 6 feet wide and rotating rapidly and throwing water about. It gradually slowed and stopped. He and his partner decided to take a canoe to the spot where the object was. Grass growing from the shallow lake bed out of the water was burnt. The lake floor was disturbed, and the water was muddy, but the object was gone. Noting a keen interest in retrieving it, the Royal Canadian Air Force visited. But like the witness, they found nothing. All they noted, the lake level was considerably lower than a month earlier. Other retrievals were more successful, though. 2 years later, RCAF headquarters received intel of an unknown object crashing in Alexis Creek, British Columbia. It wrote, "A long cylindrical object, silver in color, proceeding at extreme speeds with particles of metal falling off and burning. It disappeared behind a hill and a loud explosion was heard. Overflights of nearby mountains found the crash site, but saw no crater or fallen trees. only a single oval-shaped burned area. The last available file notes police found a piece of metal 37 inches long and 13 inches wide. A crash retrieval with more documentation came in October 1968. UFO found in northern Saskatchewan, a declassified document writes. An unnamed pilot near the Manitoba border found a metal fragment that was delivered to the province's capital. Analysis found it was high-purity titanium. It was covered in a green powder thought to be a silicate mixture. On the backside of the metal was a white ceramic-like material made of aluminum oxide and unidentifiable compounds. The Air Force wrote they were confident it wasn't the kind of titanium used by military or civilian aircraft. They were equally confident it didn't match any missile designs they knew of. One official believed it could have been a piece of satellite, but it would have had to survive usually fatal conditions of re-entry by fluttering down to Earth. Documents clearly state Canada gathered UFO debris, and declassified U.S. files show programs like Moondust were interested in analyzing it, which makes sense. U.S.-Canadian cooperation on the UFO topic stretches back decades. Here is a 1963 memo in which RCMP Chief Clarence Dunlap writes to Parliament explaining Canada cooperates with the United States to investigate UFOs. Dunlap joined NORAD a year later. And here is a message from the Department of National Defense to all air traffic controllers, requesting they forward all CIRVIS reports to U.S. colleagues. CIRVIS is declassified, but rarely discussed. It requires pilots and ATC in the U.S. and Canada to share a specific kind of information. All sightings of objects that appear hostile, suspicious, or unidentified. UFOs are even a category listed. These reports show up sporadically in U.S. and Canadian files. But given the scope of these guidelines, there are likely many more that remain classified to this day. What's important about the procedures is they establish both countries have a deep relationship of intelligence sharing when it comes to UFOs. It's less clear if actual debris was shared. We have no smoking gun of a shipping manifest, for example. But the precedent is there, as is clearly documented U.S. interest. UFO crash retrievals are often presented as hypothetical, but as we've shown, there is a legitimate document trail here. So, here's what we know. A USAF contractor analyzed unique titanium alloys as early as the 40s. One participating scientist later claimed it was from a flying saucer. The USAF was also interested in sweeping up space debris across the world with an interest in crashed unidentified objects. The U.S. government denies any retrievals took place, but their closest ally in the subject, Canada, openly discusses several successful operations. There is no smoking gun, but there are several really warm ones that, when put together, suggest we already know far more about this topic than many realize. What do you think? How deep does U.S.-Canadian cooperation go today? And should we keep looking into Canadian files? Let us know in the comments. And special thanks to our Patreon supporters, including Mark T. If you like what we do, consider joining them on Patreon and help us produce one new episode every week. Most of our traffic comes from external shares, so if you have any family or friends interested in this topic, we'd appreciate it if you ask them to subscribe. Thanks for watching. See you next time.